You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
What a beautiful day for horses in the morning.
You are listening to the #1 horse podcast in the world. Here's your entertaining look at the horse world and the people in it.
This is Ashley Winch in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
And I'm Kat Gunther from White Lake, Michigan, and you're listening to the Quarter Horse Podcast for Tuesday, April 16th on Horses in the Morning. Good morning, Horse World.
You're listening to the Quarter Horse Podcast, where we explore the versatility of the world's most popular breed of horse, the American Quarter Horse.
Do we have a show for you today? We have joining us two dressage queens with a passion for quarter horses. You heard us right. Quarter horses can do more than sort cows and trail ride. I know I've shared some of my experiences with my quarter horse going down center line, having trained my own quarter horse Boo up to second level and schooling third. Kat, I know off air we've talked a little bit about your dressage experience. Can you share some of your adventures?
Yeah, so Ashley, when I was 8 years old, the lady Mary Beth Toomey, who was my first trainer, was like, okay, we're going to learn dressage. And obviously what I was doing was not dressage on my 16-year-old Palomino mare. But it was the basics of it, it was the foundational aspects of dressage, which are so important. And then I just kind of continued from there. That was my first horse show, was a dressage.
No way!
Show. This is really kind of sad, but funny.
Oh, you have to share it now. You can't just tease us like that.
I'm going to tell you, don't worry. There were two people in the class, and I was one of them, and I got second. And I remember my whole family came to watch. I just cried. I was like, how could I have gotten second out of two? So that was my first experience, because I got confused about the letters. So in dressage, you have the letters in the arena. Like, people can read you go from X to M or whatever it is. I personally don't know if what I just said was correct, but you get what I mean. I got lost. We're not the pros.
That's why we're having them join us.
Exactly. They have to tell us. But yeah, I got a little bit lost. So,
it happens to the best of us. What I used to have to do, because I would get lost at all the letters, other than like changing rein or whatever, going across the diagonal. I was like, which is where? And I actually, in our center aisle of our barn, we had a 6-stall barn, 3 and 3 on either side. So I set up the letters in the barn, and I myself as a horse crazed teenager would walk, trot, canter. So walk, skip, and jog, acting out the entire dressage test with my letters up in the aisle because it made a perfect rectangle.
That's how you do it. That's what I used to do with my patterns for showing. Not dressage, but when I do a horsemanship equitation pattern, I'd set it up and I'd canter around. My little
yes. Absolutely. You got to do what you got to do. And did I still go off course? Is it called off course in dressage? Maybe it's called off test. I'm not even sure, but the answer is yes, obviously.
Oh, yeah, I did too. That's why I got second out of 2 people. And I was like, oh my God.
You're so sweet. See, I'm such a egomaniac. I would never tell anyone there were only 2. I'd be like, oh yeah, I got second at my debut show. Yes. Oh yeah. Yes.
Too. I was really happy with my horse, obviously, but I was just like, oh my gosh, Kat, how could you not go from X to Y to Z, just what the heck?
You tried, and and like you said, it gave you a really solid foundation early in your riding career, which I think, I was late to the dressage game. I don't know, some of our trainers made us do it a little bit the same way my jumper trainers made us do hunters. I hated it. I just went a little bit slower and was like, okay, fine, check the box. But when I really fell in love with dressage, I was further along in my career, and I wish that everyone knew how wonderful it was. So with that, I did just want to break down the sport of dressage for anyone who wasn't familiar really quickly in the most layman terms that we can, because even the word dressage sounds so fancy.
It really does. Do you remember there's that one video of Snoop Dogg and I think Kevin Hart?
Oh my God, yes.
They're watching a dressage horse and they're like, he's dancing.
And he's doing the crip walk.
Yeah. Yep.
And actually, fun fact, the dressage horse from the Olympics that year, I think it was 2 Summer Olympics ago, went on to star in a Snoop Dogg music video. So it was not a quarter horse. I'm sorry, folks, but that is your pop culture trivia for the day.
Just go up to your friend out there and be like, did you know this?
Did you know? So,
Yeah.
Snoop Dogg, huge fan of the sport of dressage. And honestly, it is exactly like dancing. It's all about teamwork between horse and rider, and they're performing a series of movements in perfect harmony. So dressage riders use subtle cues to guide their horses through precise movements like a piaffe, which is prancing around in place, or a passage, which is like a super collected trot. The best pairs you can see make it look effortless, like the horses dancing on their own. The rider uses their legs, seat, and weight to communicate without any voice commands, clucks, or kisses allowed, which I know our quarter horse folks, that's a tough one.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've ridden...
doing that.
Oh, yeah.
In the show pen, like I get yelled, they don't cluck, don't cluck.
I rode a quarter horse. She wouldn't canter if you didn't go...
Yeah.
She would just trot faster and she would never transition into the 3-beat canter.
Yeah, you have to be so silent with how you communicate.
Yes.
It's beautiful. It's challenging.
It's like a duck on water. You know, on top, it doesn't look like the duck's doing anything, but underneath his little feet are going. So riders compete for points based on how well they execute these movements and how well trained the horse is. Judges look for things like accuracy, rhythm, and suppleness. And all that to say, my favorite part about dressage is that it isn't just for fancy horses. While some breeds do excel at dressage, you know, the warm bloods of the world, anyone with a well-trained horse can participate. That's where the quarter horse comes in.
It is such a beautiful thing to watch, and it's so good for the horse too.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Wonderful. And it's like I said, it's the cornerstone for all good riding habits. You know, like a solid seat, soft hands. It's just essential to be any kind of rider in any kind of discipline.
I agree completely. And I think it's important too, as a rider, learning what true connection and self-carriage is in an animal. You know, it's one thing to talk about or see in a video, but when you feel that horse's back come up under your seat and they're carrying themselves, like I still like, I can feel it like it was yesterday, and this was probably when I was 15. And that's a long time ago, you guys.
I know what you mean though, because it's a cool feeling, because the horse is working with you, not against you, not on its own, it's with you, which I don't know, that's the beauty of dressage, in my opinion. I remember I was 10 years old and maybe 11 years old. It was right when a little after I started riding, and my family went to the World Equestrian Games when it was in Kentucky.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah. I went and watched the dressage finals or whatever it was, and Totalis, he's not a quarter horse, but he's one of the best dressage horses of all time. And I just saw him it was beautiful. The movements, and just, I'm excited to talk to our guest today, because just thinking about how quarter horses can fit into that kind of role, it's amazing.
Well, and you know, it's funny thinking about it, reflecting, I suppose. They are kind of built for it with their big old butts.
Big booties.
They're big, you know, they got those powerhouse behinds to drive them. The suppleness, not so much, but you can work on suppleness, which is the good thing.
Until you make it, you know, you're just out there and you're like, everything's fine. It's okay.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's go ahead and get started and call our first guest. After a quick word from our Equine Network sponsor, US Rider.
Even under the best circumstances, travel is stressful for horses. We've all been there, stuck on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. You can make the journey knowing that US Rider is there for you. Get peace of mind on the road with US Rider's nationwide 24/7 roadside assistance coverage for both you and your horse. Join today at usrider.org.
Thanks to auditor Rachel Briggs for recommending Maddie. Welcome to the show, Maddie. We're so excited to have you join us on the Quarter Horse podcast. You started your dressage career in 2004 with your Welsh pony Brightwood and have been tearing up the dressage world ever since. And congrats on being a USDF bronze and silver medalist. That's really impressive.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. As I tried to interrupt you in your beginning intro.
No, you're good. You're good. No. Oh, well, we like to start off with all our guests and ask the same question. So tell us about your favorite quarter horse and what makes them so special to you in your riding career.
Oh, goodness. Well, I've had a lot of experiences with quarter horses throughout my life. My youth, I grew up pretty much riding quarter horses in a dressage program, but they were lesson horses. But ever since then, I just really fell in love with the breed and I loved the athleticism and their brains. And so that kind of transferred into my adult riding career, I guess. But really the two that have made the biggest impact in my life, definitely Ryder, my gray quarter horse that I had from 2021 to last year in 23. And then now I've moved on to my husband's ex roping horse, Blue Duck. And both of them have just been like such a blessing in my life. They're just amazing horses. And so those have definitely impacted me the most. But like I grew up seeing Rugged Lark, in that era, and I had his Breyer horse, and I remember seeing him live in person, and his owner was riding him with just like a rope around his neck, and I think he had like some roses around his neck too. This was in the Hampton Classic Horse Show a long time ago. But I don't know, I just feel like quarter horses have been such a big part of my life and definitely have a big piece of my heart.
All right, that's beautiful. So what characteristics of quarter horses do you think allow them to excel in the dressage pen? You're saying their brain,
Well, yes, the brain and the temperament, and I just think their general, like I said, athleticism. I mean, I took Ryder, who was a Western Pleasure dropout, to schooling the third level, and kind of playing with some of the FEI movements, and I never thought that I would be able to get him there. Just the way he was built conformationally, he was a little bit more downhill, but just with proper dressage work, I started to realize, wow, like even though he's a little physically like limited in that regard, his brain, like he wanted to do it. And that's sometimes something that I think even the purpose bred horses don't have, is that desire to really try and really work. And I'm a big believer, if the horse doesn't want to do it, you're never going to be able to get them to do it, right? So
sure. I mean, they're half the equation. They have to be a willing participant that wants to have that
they have to want to do it. And so I found with the quarter horses, the two that I've been working with, they show up to work every day and they're excited to learn. They're excited to learn how to use their body. They're willing to try for you. And there's something really special about going in the ring and having a horse that wants to work and wants to try and is willing to give you what they have in order to not perform, but just they want to please. And so that was really neat to feel with Ryder, is I think his brain and temperament helped him succeed the most in the dressage arena. And then with Blue, same thing. He's a little bit more physically capable, I think, than Ryder, just built a little more uphill in the shoulder. But every day I was working with my trainer the other day over Pivo, and she was like, he's the type of horse that I see that he really wants to learn how to work and how to use his body. I'm like, yes, he wants to try. So I think that, I know there's many warm bloods out there and other horses that probably have the same characteristics, but I haven't particularly felt it on this level like I do with my quarter horses.
That's amazing. Wow. So can you describe, just for the listeners that don't know, like the different levels of dressage and how that usually looks?
Sure. So we start out basically going by the training pyramid, the training scale, and everything kind of starts at rhythm and relaxation, and then it builds from there into more collection and cadence, that kind of upper echelon, I guess. But The lower levels, I would say, intro is basically walk trot. There's one test that has some canter in it. And then you move into training level, which is just like basic acceptance of the leg and the contact, a lot of geometry. And then from training level, you move into first, second, kind of that's where it starts to get a little bit more physically demanding, like leg yields, shoulder ins, turn on the haunches. Third level is when they start to introduce the flying changes and the half pass, which is kind of like a shoulder in on the diagonal moving toward it's, it's one of those things where it's like hard to explain
Fancy.
and it's
dancing. The horse
it's dancing. Once you
Yeah.
get to third level, you're dancing.
Yeah.
And then in the national levels, the highest level is fourth level, which introduces the flying changes in sequence, which is like the tempi changes and some baby pirouettes. Then you move into the FEI levels, which is your small tours, the pre-St. George, intermediate one freestyle. And then you go into the big tour, which is what you see at the Olympics. You do like the intermediate 2, which is not part of the Olympics. That's kind of an intro to the Grand Prix. And then the Grand Prix is the highest level and the highest degree of collection, which we all aspire to get there one day. But it would be even more amazing if I could do it on a quarter horse, which can be done, but we'll see.
Oh, yeah. If you believe it, you can do it.
Exactly. Just have to find the horse that can get there, but they're out there.
Yes. And me and Maddie were talking about this before we started, but her husband does roping, right?
Mhm.
And then you do dressage. What it's like, can you explain the synergies between the two? Because when you think of them, you don't think that there's a lot that overlaps, but I feel like there's a lot of foundational things.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. That was one thing when Barrett and I started dating was it was always kind of like, oh, dressage rider, team roper. And then one time we spent together, it was like, no, like the two worlds do kind of combine over. And I think that's a misconception that I hear a lot in the roping world is sometimes I'm almost like made fun of as like, oh, you're the English rider, you're the dressage rider. But the true horsemen that I meet in this industry appreciate the dressage. And they're like, oh, well, we do that or we do that. And I was just with my husband at his social media job. He's a photographer for Reliance Ranches. And we were at the farm earlier this week and I'm watching the guys ride. I'm like, they're basically doing aspects of dressage and, side passing, making the horse, go round over their back. And so that is one misconception that should be debunked because when I started working with Blue, I think more seriously, like over the last year, just working leg yields and making him more aware of the body, Barrett was starting to feel kind of those differences in the roping arena. And basically all dressage is it literally means training. Mm-hmm. So it's just building their body, giving them, the muscle strength over the back. But it's neat to see like how that intersects with each other. Like we just bought a 2-year-old who is going to be Barrett's roping horse eventually when she grows up. But I'm excited to take her in the dressage arena and introduce that side too, because it just, everything helps, right? Like there's no reason why she can't learn how to do shoulder ins and leg yields and work on her transitions and all of that, because I think it does cross over eventually. But it goes back to, like I said, I think the true horsemen in the roping world appreciate what I do versus those who kind of like, oh, you're just a dressage rider. It's like, no, you don't know what you're talking about.
I've said it once and I'll say it again. I feel like dressage is the foundation for any good rider to have a good seat, to have connection with the horse. And like you said, you're moving the different parts of the horse.
Yeah, body control.
It's body control.
Sure. Body control, strength over the back and shoulder, and a general awareness of the hindquarters. And there were times when Barrett was doing things that were dressage-esque and didn't even realize it. Mm-hmm. And so then I would point it out and he's like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. It's like, yeah, you guys do turn on the forehands. Like you're not just moving like their haunches around their shoulder. You're actually doing like a turn on the forehand. And so it's neat to draw that connection. And I'm glad that I'm able to bring a little bit more awareness to that side of it for the ropers, because the women that I've talked to on Instagram that rope are like, oh, we do dressage like all the time. And then we rope, we do both. So it's neat to see it kind of make that connection.
Yeah. And quarter horses are so versatile. Like you could go and do roping, do dressage. They'll do it.
Well, look at Blue. I think Blue, when Barrett's had him for let's see, 7 years, 6 years. And I think they ran barrels on him. They calf roped off of him. They barrel raced off of him, and then Barrett roped off of him, obviously. And he's never done dressage in his life. I mean, I've played with him throughout the years that we've been together, but I didn't seriously pick it up until last year. And he's like excelling at it. I mean, he gets it. And now he's really starting to get fun because he's really understanding like the connection and the push from behind. So it's like, oh my God, I wish I would have had this horse 10 years ago, because he probably could have made it to the Grand Prix. Probably because, any horse can do it. It's just teaching them how to do the tricks. But yeah, it's like, oh, I wish I would have had him forever ago, because he's just
gotta rewind.
I know, but that's the nice thing about them, is they're so versatile, and so many of them are amateur friendly, which is really what I want in my life right now.
For sure. Now, I got a fun question for you.
Okay.
Tell us about one of your horse's quirks and what makes them so special to you.
Oh gosh. Well, I could go on and on about Leah, but she's a Dutch warm blood, so she doesn't fall into this category.
One of your quarter horse's quirks.
One of my quarter
something
horse
funny.
quirks. I think Blue, like Ryder, was very like monotone. Like if he would talk, I feel like he would just be like, okay, whatever. He wasn't like as expressive in his emotions. Blue has no problem in telling you what he likes and what he doesn't like. And there was one time we were shooting some halters for a company, and it was a big box of halters that we had to shoot over a multitude of days, because Blue, after 5 halters, he was like, I'm not putting my ears forward. And we'd walk him back out to the spot in the arena where we were shooting. And when he's like irritated, he wrinkles his nose. So he like draws his nose up and he puts his ears back and he just stands there. And he's like, I'm not doing it. Nothing. And so I love his, like, he will tell you when he is, pleased, happy, sad. And we have our body worker come out once a month. And if she doesn't go to like his shoulders, like he's a big shoulder guy, he will literally just stand there with his nose wrinkled and like throw his head to the side and point to her. And then once she starts working on his shoulders, he'll release and he'll start yawning over and over again. But
like right here, I'm showing you where to go.
Exactly. I just love how he's a very like sensitive horse. And so he's not afraid to wear his emotions on his sleeve and tell you what he likes and what he doesn't like. And that kind of transfers over when you're riding him, is because he is, that way and a little more insecure. He thrives off of the, the praise, and he wants to know that he's doing a good job. So I just appreciate, it's not really a quirk, I guess. I just appreciate his personality overall, because my Dutch warm blood, she's very like, leave me the hell alone unless you have food. Like, I don't need you, like, whatever. And
that's how my quarter horse was. If I didn't have Twizzlers, he loved
exactly.
Yeah, we had a sleazy for him that said the Twizzler man, because he loved him so much. So like I had to have a peace offering.
Exactly. Leah is very much that way. Ryder was very go with the flow, like, whatever you want to do today, Mom. Like, sure.
Quarter horse. Just
yeah. And then Blue, maybe it's the Hancock in him. He is like a direct Hancock baby. So I've heard that they are very set in their ways, but I just appreciate that about him, because I've never had a horse that is so not sensitive, but just he takes, what's the word I'm looking for? He just listens to your emotions, I guess, and he feeds off of them, and then you have to be there and be very secure for him.
I love it. They sound wonderful. They all sound wonderful.
Thank you.
Joining us now is Katherine Abrams, a phenomenal rider and trainer with a deep well of experience in competitive dressage. Not only has Katherine competed at the highest levels, but she's also impressively developed 2 of her own horses all the way to the FEI level. Talk about dedication and talent. Katherine is a U.S. Dressage Finals FEI Intermediate 1 Freestyle Champion, USDF Bronze and Silver Medalist, USDF Bronze and Silver Freestyle Bar Medalist, a Pony Club A Certified Graduate, Go Pony Club, and USDF Safe Sport Certified.
All I have to say to that is, wow, that's impressive. And with that, Katherine, welcome to the Quarter Horse Podcast. First thing we want to know, tell us about your favorite quarter horse and what makes them so special to you in your riding career.
So yeah, thank you so much for having me. I would have to say that I really only have like one major quarter horse in my riding career, so he's also obviously my favorite.
We love that.
My quarter horse Blue, that was also the first horse I trained through Grand Prix.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I think that honestly I owe him everything. So he is probably my favorite horse of all time too.
What a perfect place for a quarter horse. So tell us about that. What was Blue's career before you got into dressage? How did you and Blue meet? We need the full scoop.
Yeah, so Blue came into my life when he was coming 5 years old. And he hadn't really done anything, so he was just sort of like green under saddle. I got him super cheap for $1,500 because he was like not being a good horse for his previous owner. So he was a big spooker, and he was just like generally really difficult to handle. And I kind of needed a project. I didn't have anything that I like perceived as a dressage horse to ride in the dressage, and I'd always wanted to try reining. So that was originally why I got Blue. And so I did train him in reining first, and I did like probably 2.5 years of reining competition on him.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was super fun. And then I also sort of like on a whim took him to a dressage show. I mean, I wasn't intending to ride him like through the levels. I just thought it would be like fun to take him as a companion for another horse. And he did his first 2 dressage tests, and he got 2 scores in the 70s.
Oh my gosh.
So I was like,
what's up,
so
Blue?
I was like, right? I thought, okay, I'll continue. And so, yeah, he just loved the dressage. I mean, he took to the reining okay, but the dressage was definitely his calling. He absolutely loved it from the very beginning. So I just figured I'd train him as far as he could go. And I went through like a few warm bloods or like medical problems throughout my time with Blue because I've had him such a long time. And so Blue just was the one who made it to Grand Prix first. So yeah, so he's been incredible because it definitely taught me a lot about training to take a horse all the way from the beginning to the end. And a horse that like not traditionally a dressage horse. So he's had a lot of like work to do on the quality of his gaits and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I have a question about that. When you think of dressage, like I think of like a warm blood. So what dressage movements are typically harder for a quarter horse to do, if any, compared to like a warm blood?
Yeah, that's a great question. For Blue, at least, and I think it's the case for some quarter horses, like they don't really mind sitting down in engagement. And so for Blue, anything that involved lowering his hindquarter was easy. So he actually, much to my surprise, really preferred like canter pirouettes, also the piaffe, all that stuff he came to pretty naturally. For him, really hard was stuff that involved cadence. I mean, he developed a really elevated trot by the time he was doing FEI, but it was really hard for him to learn like passage. Also extended trot is difficult because he's also on the small side.
Yeah.
So he's only 14.3.
Got those stumpy legs. They can't go so far, honey.
Yeah, there's so much. He's reaching as far as he can. I mean, there's only so much in there. Every time he would get a 6 on that in the Grand Prix, I was like, I've won the Olympics. It was amazing.
I'm picturing like a shorter horse, just kind of a powerhouse. He's like a foundation quarter horse who kind of looks like a thick pony. Yeah, so he's certainly not like the big huntery type. He's the pony kind. Gosh, and you braid his mane, like, because it's all fancy, right? You have to.
Yeah. I mean, originally I started with like one of those running braids because I was doing reining at the same time.
Sure.
So I kept his mane long. And then I rode with a judge who was like, I hope you don't put a running braid on him. And I was like, uh-oh. And she just was like, I don't know. I do traditional braids because it's already so like different. And so I took her advice and I knew how to sew in braids. So I figured out how to like sew in dressage braids on the long mane. So yeah, so he wore regular dressage braids after that forever. Yep. And he dressed up as best he could.
So I have to ask, I also, not to your level, but I did do dressage with a backyard $1,500 quarter horse, and he loved it. And it was awesome. And we got like so much shade for him being a quarter horse.
Yeah.
Right? To the point where my trainer made up a breed and called him a quasi-Fallion. And
hilarious.
People literally would be like, "Oh, that sounds so fancy. Is that imported?" We're like, "Yes, definitely."
Right.
So I wanted to ask, like, did you get much shade, competing on a smaller quarter horse, not the big fancy typical warm blood? And what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely experienced some of that. Especially when I started taking him to like bigger competitions. So I took him to the US Dressage finals, and I also took him several years to Dressage at Devon. So that especially was like, he was for sure the only quarter horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was different enough that the Chronicle of the Horse wrote an article about him. So, I mean, I think some people are surprised. And definitely like there were people along the way who were like, I don't know why you're bothering with this horse. But I like training horses. And so I just thought, I don't know, he's enjoying this. So I don't know why I would stop just because he seems like he's not like a warm blood or a traditional breed. So, yeah, but I absolutely got questioned a lot.
Yeah. I love it too. As you were saying this, I just thought how perfect, a horse of a different color and his name is Blue. Like it's just all so poetic. Yep. I see you. I see you.
Yep.
Oh, that's amazing. How has the perception of quarter horses in dressage evolved over the years? Have you seen quarter horses become more accepted? Do you feel like you and Blue were an integral part in that? Or do you still see it kind of as being the odd man out?
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perception, things shifted a little bit at a certain point. But that also might just be like, because I sort of tuned a lot of it out.
Yeah.
I actually have 6 FEI horses right now, and only one of them is a warm blood. So like we deal with this on multiple breed from multiple angles.
I love that.
Yeah. And there are things that like genuinely they're not as good at, but there's other things they're very, very good at.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I think that I've seen it go both ways even recently, but I have received like less negative attention, I think, from like general bystanders. Yeah. So from my perspective, it seems like it's better, but I also think like maybe 15 years ago, the sort of trend in dressage horses was like the bigger, the better.
Yeah.
And now like sport ponies are really popular, which opens up more breeds and smaller horses. So for a long time, Blue he looked like a miniature horse.
Yeah.
But now he's, there might be other horses around his size at the show. So that helps a lot.
It sounds like Blue is just a little powerhouse. He said it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. He's not lacking for the hind end power either. So he was just, and Blue like never questioned that he could do any of this stuff. So, I mean, again, why was I going to question him? He just, everything I asked him to do, he's like, oh yeah, I can do that.
That's the thing about quarter horses. They have such a heart. Like they try, they want to make you happy, do their best. So, that's awesome.
And you said Blue was 4 or 5 when you got him. How many years did that take for you both to go up to Grand Prix?
So I think I started dressage when he was 6, and he did his first Grand Prix when he was 16. So it took a little longer.
What a phenomenal feat, though. I mean, that's absolutely jaw-droppingly inspiring. For those of you who don't know what that takes to take a horse who doesn't know a thing to then doing what you see in the Olympics, like, holy smokes.
It was a long journey.
I'm going right now. Like, honestly, I know you can't see me, but I'm just like, shocked. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. It felt really good to also ride my first Grand Prix on a horse that I trained.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And since then, I've also trained one of my warm bloods through the Grand Prix level. So I definitely don't think I could have done that so effectively without Blue, because it did take a little longer because some things were natural for him. But I I spent a lot of the time I was working with him as an FEI horse, working with Allie Brock, who's a dressage Olympian. And I remember she said to me, like, she just thinks people give up too easily. Like, there's no reason to stop trying to train him. So I just kept going. And at a certain point, I thought maybe he's too old, but like, he's not unsound. He's super comfortable. He doesn't even need like major joint maintenance. So again, why stop if he's enjoying this? So, and he just kept wanting to learn. I mean, even now I teach on him as a schoolmaster because he's 21. And he just like gets better all the time.
I love this person.
I love Blue too.
I've never seen a picture of him, but I love him. Okay.
Oh, now I know we're the quarter horse show, but you had mentioned you have other breeds as well in your program. So just to share the love, because we love everybody here. We are not breedists. Please tell us about your other horses.
Yeah, so I have, like I said, I have one warm blood. She's my like one regular dressage horse, 17-hand Oldenburg. And that's my like CDI horse right now, who also is about to do her first Grand Prix. And then I have, we have a small tour, like Inter One horse that's an Arabian saddlebred, who we also trained all the way up the levels. And then we have a Connemara pony that he actually came as a pre-St. George pony. So he's super cool. Yep. And then we have a Lusitano. And then we have a horse that is like registered Oldenburg sport pony, but he's like a thoroughbred Dutch riding pony cross.
Oh, cute. So lots of knee action with him.
Well, honestly, like he was bred to be a hunter pony.
Oh,
so
okay.
it kind of, he's like more rounded moving than a hunter horse for sure. But he was registered like a Virginia bred pony for hunter ponies, and he grew like huge compared to his sire and dam. So he's 15 hands, so he's not a hunter pony.
He had too much Wheaties.
Yeah. So now he's a dressage pony. Yeah.
Oh, I just love that you have so much diversity in your string. That's so, again, inspiring. Because I think that's kind of the magic about dressage, is that it is open to any breed and any rider, and anybody really can do it. I feel like it is kind of overwhelming because it's so fancy and all this, that, and the other. But if you find the right trainer or the right barn, it's really the most inclusive space in horseback riding, I think, that I've found.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it's amazing how it just benefits everybody. So, especially if it's done correctly, you know, it's making the horse healthier through their whole life.
Exactly.
And so, also, I have a lot of senior horses that are still competing FEI levels and like super comfortable because they use their bodies correctly. So it's like so amazing to see them just have such increased longevity. So yeah, it's, and they all can do it. I mean, obviously they're not all going to the Olympics, but they're all super competitive horses at what they're doing. So yeah, there's not often a lot of limits I think are perceived and not real. So yeah, if you just keep going and you find a good trainer and you train the horse systematically and it enjoys what it's doing and it takes the training well, then there's no reason they can't do the stuff.
That is so, I love that. That's so important. The horse has to enjoy its job, or else
for sure.
You're not going to want to work with them if they're not having fun with you. Then, but I do have a funny question for you. This is like, okay, are you ready?
Okay.
You have a favorite funny story to share, whether it happened in the training ring, in the show pen. Like, what's one moment that you're like, oh gosh, take your hand. What?
I had a lot of those moments on Blue.
Yeah.
Because he, like I said, he wasn't well behaved really. So people would always say, you know, well, the one thing about training a quarter horse is like, at least you have a good brain. And I was like, no, not in this case. I mean, that's unfortunately not. He was so reactive to so much stuff. So, I mean, I remember there's probably two things. The first time he unloaded me was when I was like, assuming he would be like a quarter horse. So I like was riding him up my mountain in a halter bareback. And I mean, he was young, but I was like, he's quarter horse, fine.
Yeah, I had no problem with that. I'm following your logic.
Exactly. So I headed up the mountain bareback, and I mean, he dumped me on a slope in the gravel. Like, there were cuts all over my body. I was like, what is wrong with this horse? And then I thought, oh, just a flaw, like just a little, he spooked a deer or something. No, it was absolutely just who he is. He was just, he has this spinning leap move.
Oh,
and
fancy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Every direction at once. So I quickly learned that we do not ride without proper gear outside. So we always wear our saddle. And now, I mean, he does everything bareback in a halter. He can do his 110 Bs, his pee off, everything without any equipment, but only in the ring, probably. But there was also one time I was riding him at Dressage at Devon. I guess it was the second year he was there because he was doing intermediate one. And he finished a test. And I was like, that was really actually fantastic. And it was great. He got a score in the mid 60s, which I was super excited about for quarter horse at Devon. And, but on the way out of the arena, I was like, oh my God, this was so good. This was fantastic.
Yeah, you're feeling it.
Yeah. So I let him walk out on a loose rein, and he hardcore almost unloaded me before we left the arena. I lost both my stirrups.
Oh no.
I lost my reins. I was like, God, I don't want to fall because then I'm eliminated. And I know this is going to be
just
like a
stay on until we're out of the ring. That's all you need.
Grab the braids and hold on for dear life.
I mean, so naughty. There was nothing there. He was just like full of adrenaline, and he was like, that was awesome.
Oh yeah. He just was feeling him. So Blue doesn't have red flags. He has blue flags.
Yes, that's right.
You gotta ignore the blue flags. It's just a little flaw. That's it.
That's right. That's all. He just goes a little crazy every once in a while. Yeah.
I mean, same Blue, same.
Yeah. I mean, it's a vibe. It's relatable. So.
Oh my gosh, Katherine, this was so much fun. We loved learning about Blue and really hearing your story about working with a quarter horse, despite, maybe the popularity or acceptance of the breed, and showing the world what a quarter horse can do. So I want to, before we round out, ask you if you currently offer clinics. If so, where folks can find you online to learn more about you and everything you do.
Yeah, so I definitely offer clinics. One of my favorite things to do is to teach. So I travel anywhere for clinics. And so I have a website that's my farm's website, which you've seen, which is harmonyhills.com. But the main way to reach me is through social media. So I have an Instagram page, which is just my name, and it's just Katherine Abrams. So that also has a lot of up-to-date information about me. So but I answer DMs and that sort of thing pretty quickly. But also my email can be found on my website. Which again, it's just harmonyhills.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again so much for taking the time. And we just love that you love quarter horses too.
Yep, definitely. They're great.
Well, thanks so much for tuning into the Quarter Horse podcast on Horses in the Morning. Be sure to like, subscribe, and tell your friends all about the world's favorite breed of horse.